Saturday morning, thought it would be a great time to do a tag video. Mike recently tagged me on a reading shifts tag, so I'm going to get into that. But first, I just want to say that I know a bunch of you have come over from M's Reading, Continuing Education. A lot of you subscribed following her video, and I just want to say that I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming over and subscribing, and hopefully you'll stick around. Hopefully you'll enjoy the content that I make and produce, and some of the book discussions that we have here. So, and yeah, what can you say about Em? Lost for words here. She's super awesome. Anyone that's subscribed to my channel that's not already subscribed over there, please go check her channel out. She's fantastic and just good people. So appreciate it very much. Anyway, I'm going to get into the tag. Mike, like I said, Mike tagged me, and it was an interesting tag, and I think it was a tag that I could actually answer questions for. So I'm going to hopefully get that going right now here. The first question is, how has your reading developed over time? Do the kind of books that bring you the most pleasure now differ from the books that you love most earlier in your life? Has there been changes, that kind of thing? I would say that it has changed, but it hasn't. I think I started off as a kid reading lots of history, lots of nonfiction, but also when you're younger, I think you read a lot more fantasy, a lot more horror. And I think what shifted for me as I got older was I read less of that. I think university had a big impact on me. And I don't mean this like in a sort of a one is better, because I've shifted back since university. I just think like going to university, you kind of become one of those people that like only watch foreign movies. I'm not gonna because you get kind of arrogant, and I think that's how I became. And now once you mature out of that university stage, and then you're like, well, that was a bit cliche to sort of act like the young intellectual. I've sort of got back into reading all kinds of fiction, historical fiction, and fantasy and all that genre. So I think the biggest shift for me was, being a normal person, going into university, getting educated, and then sort of getting back into real life and sort of getting re-educated out of that whole university thing. And I think it was good though, because I read a lot of stuff that I never would have read had I not done that. Stuff that I love. Like I took a class in university, a lit class called Modern English Satire, and read a lot of good books in that course that are some of which are my favorite books today. What books that I think are the best that have ever been written, like Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, I read in that class for the first time. So not poo-pooing on it totally, but that's one of the biggest shifts I think that I can sort of actually wrap my head around on this question. Moving on to the next one, do you find yourself choosing different kinds of books at different periods of the year? For example, seasonal, travel, etc. Not really, I would say. I just kind of have a random reading pattern that just goes, when I'm done one, I sort of start looking for the next few. No seasonal aspect to it. Sometimes when I'm traveling, I would say, that's a good part. Even part of the question I think makes sense, because sometimes you're looking for a little bit more of a candy read while you're traveling, and I maybe I guilty that. I like to, I think I mentioned this before, I like to look for books in airports because I pick them up and then I end up reading books on planes and stuff like that. And so sometimes those little airport bookshops can kind of dictate what I'm going to read on my trip. But they're usually pretty good, so I'll pick up whatever's on sale. But I don't think that really answers the question. But generally I would say no. Have there been any times in your life when circumstances have limited or changed your reading in some way? I think that yes, for sure. I remember when I was a kid, I used to read a lot as a teenager. When I finished high school, I'm from Saskatchewan, which is kind of like if you're American, it's like flyover country. It's like being from the Dakotas or Kansas or something like that. It's farm country. And when I graduated, I actually went to Jasper National Park, and I got a job. Like I didn't go straight into university. I went and I worked as a lifty at a ski resort out in the Rocky Mountains. And so I was basically full-time snowboarding for probably like 3 years. And then in the summertime, I worked in a kitchen at well, not a resort, a tourist spot called Moline Lake. Some people maybe you're watching this, you've heard of Moline Lake. It's kind of Spirit Island. It's like the famous photo looking out over the mountains in the Moline Lake with Spirit Island there. So that's what I did for 3 years. And over that 3 years, I don't think that I saw a book. If I read anything or did anything with my brain at all, I would have been surprised. It was pretty much, yeah, we'll leave it at that. It was like what happens in Jasper stays in Jasper. It was it was an interesting time. Anyway, I got back into. I went from there to university and then got back into reading. And then as an adult, with my job after university, it was my profession. Although the job I'm doing now isn't quite as bad, but when I was in a certain work, like with a certain group, I would say, I'm being a little cagey. I worked all the time, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was very, very aggressive, and I only read for work and wrote and drafted for work. So now I'm in a different part of my career and different part of my life, and I'm back to casual pleasure reading again, which is nice. So, life shapes and dictates what you can do, what you can't do. That is true for everyone. Reading is often the first thing to go, sadly, but that's just the way it is, at least for me. BookTube is full of discussions of reading slumps, and when dedicated readers seem to lose interest for a while in books, sometimes they just can't find a book that appeals to them. Have you ever experienced this slump? If so, how do you handle it? Generally, if I have a reading slump, it's because I don't have time, and that's just writing it out. Then I just keep doing what I'm doing. When I get time, I try to squeeze something in. I have little things that I try to do where I'll try to, because I take public transit downtown for work, I'll try to read a little bit on transit, or I'll try to read a little bit over lunch if I have a lunch, or take lunch. Little things to just kind of keep it going, even if it's very minimal. And then that way, when I sort of get something going, I'll jump back in right away or fairly easily. One thing I like to do is there's a whole bunch of books. There's another tag where it was like, how many books do you have on your sort of wish list? If I haven't read for a while and I want to get kickstarted again, I'll go back to that wish list and I'll buy a book that I've always wanted, and then I'll use that as my book to get me going again and reading again. And I think that's a good thing to do, is just have a list of books that are kind of like always kind of books that you wanted to do, and you can grab that one book and to get you going again. Fiction is often easier than nonfiction. Like a good read that you just want to, get done real quick. That might help. I don't know. But like I said, usually it's my life that's dictating the sort of, the waves, and it's not a slump per se or anything like that. So yeah, I don't know if that's a good answer to that question. So the next question, I think this is the last question. I don't know if I missed one. I might have jumped over one. If I did, sorry about that, but I think you'll live. Tell us about a few books that almost always work for you, something that might have remained a favorite throughout your life despite any changing reading tastes, something that always seems to hit just the right spot when you need a lift, or perhaps some lifetime book hangover where the text will always be at the back of your mind. That's a hard question. I'm not totally sure what that means. if that's a genre you always go back to, or a specific book that you go back and reread, or a book that you think about. Like, I would say two things. I think, obviously, if you follow my channel, you know that I typically read nonfiction. The genre of history that I read most is probably a mix between a little bit of military history and ancient history. And like a lot of people, I'm trying to branch out from that because it's like, it's time for me to get a little bit bigger than Rome and read about other stuff. But as far as this question goes, I think with fiction, the fiction that always sticks in my mind is classical Russian lit that is sort of 1860s up to 1930s. So that essentially 90, 100-year period is is a gold mine for me. I know it's not for everyone, but I love that stuff. I'll read short stories. Like if you've ever read Turgenev's short stories like Asya or Mamu, they're just fantastic. All kinds of those books are just amazing. And that goes, I know that people talk about Dostoevsky and Tolstoy a lot, but there's so many other writers that are very much well worth reading. Obviously, Pasternak doesn't get talked about as enough. Dr. Zhivago, it's an amazing book. There's others, and then that takes me up to sort of Bulgakov and the White Guard and Master and Margarita, or The Master and Margarita. And so if there's one area that fiction that I love, it's that. I think the other area of fiction that I just absolutely love, and I always go back to reading those books, I love satire. I have forever. I love it because it's has a message, but it's also funny. And I think conveying a message or standing in opposition to something or critiquing power or whatever, when you do it with humor and humility and humanity, you get so much more out of it. And that's why books like Catch-22 for me are phenomenal books. They go back to Gulliver's Travels or to Jonathan Swift. And it's just, that is the kind of reading that I love. And so if I can find a good satire that's super funny, that's super smart, I'll read something like that as well. And I always keep those kind of books in the back of my mind for sure. Kurt Vonnegut sometimes, but Catch-22, just an amazing book. I recommend that if you've never sat down and looked at satire as a thing, I would Google that, or use AI for good and just try to get it to spit out a few options for modern English satire, and pick some of those books. Pick something funny because they're just fun reads. So that's my tag. I think I missed something in here, but anyway, it's Saturday morning. I'm just on my second coffee, so this one might be a little bit slow. Hopefully not too bad. We will see you on the next one. Appreciate you stopping by. Love to hear from you. Love to hear how you're going and what you're reading and what's good. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.